In September of 2025, Microsoft, one of the most powerful tech companies on earth, did something that shocked Wall Street. They signed a $19.4 billion deal with a company that most people never even heard of. A company that just 18 months earlier didn't even exist under its current name. A company that was technically suspended from trading and considered dead by many investors. That company is Nebius. And if you're wondering why Microsoft, Amazon, and Google are suddenly scrambling to lock in deals with smaller infrastructure providers, the answer will fundamentally change how you think about the AI revolution. Because here's what no one's talking about. The trillion-dollar tech giants who promise to dominate AI don't actually have enough power. Literally, not enough electricity, not enough data centers, not enough GPUs, and companies like Nebius, they saw this bottleneck coming years ago. So this is the story how a company rose from the ashes of Russia's biggest tech empire, reinvented itself into the shadows, and emerged as an infrastructure backbone that Microsoft, yes, I'm talking about Microsoft, desperately needed to survive the AI arms race. So stay with me, because what you're about to learn isn't just about one company, it's about the invisible war being fought for the infrastructure that will power the next decade of technology. So let's rewind. February 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. Within days, international sanctions slammed down like a hammer. And guess who's caught in the crossfire? Yandex, Russia's equivalent of Google, the $30 billion tech empire. It was actually listed on NASDAQ, employing thousands, trading suspended, investments were actually frozen. The company that had dominated Russian internet for 2 decades was suddenly radioactive. So here's what's kind of gets interesting. Yandex wasn't just a search engine. It was a technology powerhouse with world-class engineers, cutting-edge cloud infrastructure, and AI research that rivaled Silicon Valley. And its founder, Katie Volos, forgive me if I pronounced that wrong, they saw something that the rest of the world didn't. He already left Russia years earlier, becoming an Israeli citizen. And while everyone else saw a company that was pretty much dying, he saw an opportunity to shed the Russian assets, keep the best technology and talent, and rebuild as something entirely new. For 18 months, Nebius negotiated in the shadows. In July 2024, the deal closed. A Russian consortium paid $5.4 billion for Yandex and Russia's base assets. And what remained? A leaner, laser-focused company with one mission: build the infrastructure for the AI revolution. In August of 2024, Yandex officially became Nebius Group. The name, a combination of Nebula, Latin for cloud, and the Mobius, the strip for symbolizing infinite possibilities. In October of 2024, Nebius returned to NASDAQ. The stock that had last traded at $18.94 in February of 2022, it opened volatile, but it closed up. And then something remarkable happened. Over the next year, as the AI infrastructure crisis intensified, the Nebius stock exploded. By October of 2025, it had just surged over 300%, but the real fireworks were yet to come. So what exactly is Nebius, and why does it matter? Think of Nebius as the specialized contractor that builds AI-specific power plants, while Microsoft, Amazon, and Google built, the general purpose data centers. Nebius builds something different. The GPU-dense AI-optimized infrastructure designed specifically for training and running large language models. And here's what they offer. First, massive GPU clusters, right? We're talking about 100,000 plus of NVIDIA's latest chips in one single location. And to put that in perspective, that's more concentrated AI computing power than most countries actually have access to, right? Secondly, the full stack AI cloud platform. And so it's not just raw computing power, but the entire ecosystem. So developer tools, cloud services, orchestration platforms, things like that. Everything that an AI company needs to kind of go from idea to production. Third, strategic geographic positioning. Data centers in Finland, France, Kansas City, they're their own crown jewel. A 300 megawatt facility out in New Jersey, in this location matters because, of course, power matters. And power is the new oil in the AI game. But Nebius isn't just infrastructure. The company also owns other companies. Avride, which is developing autonomous vehicles and delivery robots. Triple 10, which is pretty much an educational tech platform for AI skills training. Stakes, which is a data labeling platform crucial for AI training. And Stakes and ClickHouse, a high-performance database system. Yet, it's a core AI infrastructure business that's exploding. In Q2 of 2025 alone, Nebius generated $105.1 million worth of revenue, a 625% increase year over year. They raised their annual run rate revenue guidance to $1.1 billion. And the kicker is, they claim that their core operations already are EBITDA positive, meaning they're not just growing, they're actually growing profitably. And in an industry where most players are burning cash, that's absolutely remarkable. But the question is why? Why is demand trying to surge so dramatically? The dirty secret that Silicon Valley doesn't want you to know is that the AI revolution is being choked by infrastructure bottlenecks. OpenAI's GPT-4 required roughly 25,000 GPUs to train. GPT-5 estimates suggest that's about 50,000 to 100,000 GPUs. And that's just one model for one company. Google's Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, Meta's Llama, every major AI lab is in an arms race to build bigger and more powerful models. And every single one needs massive GPU clusters. But the problem is, you can't just order 100,000 GPUs and plug them into a wall socket. Right? The infrastructure requirements are staggering. Power, firstly, the training frontier of AI models can consume as much electricity as a small city. Nebius' own 300 megawatt New Jersey facility, that's enough to power 200,000 homes, and they're dedicating it only to AI, right? And so cooling GPUs, that actually generates enormous heat. So you need sophisticated systems that can handle the thermal output without even melting your hardware. And these GPUs need to communicate at lightning speeds. So we're talking about highly specialized bandwidth, low latency networks that cost millions to build. And that's just talking about the software and hardware side of things. But we also need real estate. You need a physical place to put these locations with access to massive power grids. So you can't just rent out some office space and call it good. So from breaking ground to operational data center, that's about 18 to 36 months minimum. In a market where moving at AI speed, that's a very long time. We see new things coming up with AI almost every week. So traditional cloud giants like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, they all built their infrastructure for general purpose computing, web hosting, databases, virtual machines, but not for insane demands of AI model training. And now that they're caught, it's kind of too late. They're a little flat-footed, right? So Microsoft Azure, capacity constraint. Amazon's AWS, waitlist for high-end GPU instances. And Google Cloud, same story. So this is why Microsoft's head of cloud, Scott Guthrie, admitted publicly that the surge in demand for generative AI has strained computing infrastructure. Microsoft paused and stepped away from the multiple data center projects in 2024, 2025, not because they didn't want them. That's clearly not the issue. It's because they couldn't build fast enough to meet the demand. So enter the neoclouds. Specialized providers like Nebius, CoreWeave, who saw this coming and built infrastructure specifically for AI workloads. On September 8th of 2025, Microsoft dropped the Bombshell, a multi-year deal with Nebius worth up to $19.4 billion. That's with a B, not an M, a B. So for perspective, that's larger than the GDP of 80 countries. So under their agreement, Nebius will provide Microsoft with over 100,000 of NVIDIA's cutting-edge GB300 chips from their data center out in New Jersey, starting in late 2025. The deal is structured at $17.4 billion through 2031, with options for Microsoft to expand to that $19.4 billion number if they need additional capacity. When the news broke, of course, Nebius' stock went up 60% in extended trading. The next day, another 50% pop. Scratch that. And when the news broke, Nebius' stock surged that same day and of course following. Investors suddenly realized what was happening. But here's a deeper story. Microsoft isn't just buying computing power. They're effectively renting infrastructure because they can't build their own fast enough. So think about that. Microsoft, a company with $3 trillion in market cap, decades of infrastructure experience, and virtually unlimited capital, is turning to a company that emerged from bankruptcy just call it 18 months ago. Why? Because Nebius has three things that Microsoft desperately needs. Speed. So Nebius can deploy GPU clusters in months, not years. Their team has deep expertise from their days being Yandex and building and scaling infrastructure quickly. Number two is specialization. These facilities are purpose-built for AI from day one. Every design decision, from power delivery to cooling to networking, optimized for GPU-intensive workloads. And number three, lastly, access. Through their relationship with NVIDIA, who of course invested $350 million in Nebius as well, they have priority access to the latest GPU generations that everyone's fighting over. And Microsoft isn't alone. By October 2025, Microsoft have committed over $33 billion to neocloud providers, including Nebius, CoreWeave, Nscale, and Lambda. OpenAI's foundation models trained at CoreWeave's facility in Oregon. The strategy is brilliant, right? Microsoft uses its own data centers for customer-facing AI services, where that's where they make, their highest margins, right? And offloads all that internal AI development and training workloads to specialists like Nebius. It's like a restaurant. It's called a restaurant chain owning flagship locations or franchising expansion markets. Except in this case, the franchise is a $19 billion partnership. So why should Amazon, Google, and other cloud giants be terrified? It's because Nebius and the neoclouds represent a fundamental shift in power, pun intended. For 15 years, cloud computing was a moat. Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and of course, to a lesser extent, Oracle and IBM, they dominated because their building data center infrastructure required billions in capital and years of expertise. And of course, with AI coming around, that pretty much changes the game. Specialized infrastructure beats general purpose infrastructure in the AI era. and the nimble specialists who can move faster than, the bureaucratic giants, it's a big difference. So here's what keeps, those cloud giants up at night. It's a customer leverage. OpenAI, Microsoft's biggest AI partner, is already working with Google for additional computing capacity. When most of the important partners is hedging their bets, we pretty much are losing negotiating leverage day by day. And then when it comes to the margin compression, if you're paying Nebius $19 billion for infrastructure, you're then marking up to customers. You shrink your margins. The cloud giants built empires on 60 to 70% gross margins. That's under threat. And then, of course, with all this going on, you're still losing some of your best talent. The best infrastructure engineers want to work on cutting-edge AI systems, not maintain the legacy data centers. Companies like Nebius, with their focused mission and explosive growth, that's absolutely going to draw in the most talent. That's like a talent magnet. So if AI developers are getting used to building on neocloud platforms, they might bypass Azure, they might bypass AWS and Google Cloud entirely. So the cloud giants become a commodity and infrastructure providers instead of being, platform owners. Nebius raised $700 million from NVIDIA and other investors in December of 2024. And that's not just capital, that's strategic alignment with the GPU provider who controls the silicon that everyone needs. Early access to new GPU generations, optimization for NVIDIA's software stack, and priority allocations create a compounding advantage. And the truly scary part for the incumbents is that Nebius is securing over 1 gigawatt of power capacity by the end of 2026. 1 gigawatt. And to let you know exactly what that means, that's enough to power a mid-sized city, entirely dedicated to AI workloads. So power is the ultimate bottleneck. Tech giants are literally bidding on nuclear reactors and negotiating with governments for grid access. Microsoft recently signed a deal to revive a 3-mile island to power data centers. An island just for AI power. Whoever controls the power controls the AI future, and that's a fact. But let's zoom out here, because this isn't just about one company or one deal. What we're witnessing is the infrastructure layer of AI becoming unbundled from the application layer. In the cloud era, Amazon and Microsoft and Google own both layers. You built your own apps on AWS, and AWS provided infrastructure, vertically integrated, locked in. In the AI era, that model is breaking down entirely, and it's because AI infrastructure is so specialized and capital intensive that even tech giants can't build fast enough. And that opportunity is special for people who specialize in this thing. So NVIDIA provides the chips, Nebius and other provide the data centers and cloud platforms. OpenAI, Anthropic, and other build the models. Application developers build the products. So it's a new tech stack, and fortunes will be made at every single layer. So for investors, this raises a fascinating question. Is Nebius overvalued at its current cap, or undervalued given its massive infrastructure spend coming in the next decade? Can Nebius maintain its growth trajectory once the cloud giants finally scale their own AI infrastructure? What happens when the next generation of AI models require even more computing power? Quantum, right? Classical hybrid systems, or even special chips that, we just technically do not have the technology for. So we haven't even invented some of that stuff yet. So here's what we do know for certain. NVIDIA CFO projects a $3 to $4 trillion growth AI infrastructure spending by the end of this decade. So even if Nebius captures just 2 to 3% of that market, we're talking about tens of billions in revenue. And with growth margins in the 40 to 50% range for that specialized infrastructure, and of course that sticky long-term contract with the world's biggest tech leaders, the economics of it is very compelling. So is Nebius the next $1 trillion company or a temporary beneficiary of the AI infrastructure shortage? And honestly, it's too early to tell, but what is clear is this: the AI revolution has created a crisis that traditional tech giants did not see coming. And that crisis is creating an opportunity for agile, specialized players to capture massive value. Nebius emerged from the ashes of Yandex and transformed itself in record time and positioned the company at the exact center of the most important technological shift of our generation. Whether they can sustain this momentum long term depends on the execution, of course, or if they can even deliver on the massive commitments or even secure enough power. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked, but the one thing that's undeniable is that tech giants are not in the same position that they were in 5 years ago. Because of the first time over a decade, let's say, they don't control the entire tech stack. And in that AI era, that might be the biggest vulnerability. The game has changed, and Nebius is one of the players who are writing the rules. So what do you think? Is this a sustainable disruption or a temporary displacement? Let me know in the comments. And if you guys found this valuable, of course, please subscribe, hit that like button, because the AI infrastructure wars are just getting started. And I'm going to be trying to cover every single major development. So until next time, stay curious. Peace.